Hey y'all, welcome to the Southern Appalachian Herbal Podcast. I'm Judson Carroll and I'm an herbalist. I'm also a wild crafter, a gardener, and herb grower. I'm coming to you from high atop the beautiful Blue Ridge Mountains of North Carolina, just a stone's throw from the Tennessee line, overlooking the Pisgah National Forest, absolutely surrounded by the bounty of God's green earth. I spent most of my life wandering these mountains and learning about plants from the old-timers and all sorts of characters. On this show, we'll talk about herbs and how to use them, how to find them, how to grow them, how to make preparations. We'll talk about a lot of things. We can also talk about permaculture, homesteading, foraging, and living off the land. Most anything, really. You can email me at southernappalachianherbs@gmail.com if you have a question or a comment. You can also contact me through the Grow Network, where I'm a regular contributor and a moderator for the forums. And my blog is, of course, southernappalachianherbs@blogspot.com. All right, y'all. I'm going to sit my guitar down and let's talk about herbs. Hey y'all, welcome to episode number 3 of the Southern Appalachian Herbal Podcast. Wow, it's been quite a week. Let me tell you, I am no longer having a one-sided conversation here. In the past week, approximately 100 people have listened to my podcast on SoundCloud. Over 300 people visited my blog. I am answering questions, I'm interacting with folks, and I am loving it. This is a lot of fun. So keep those questions coming. Email me or get in touch. You can get in touch with me now on MeWe. That's a much nicer social media platform than Facebook. I had a Facebook page for all of 2 hours for this podcast before they disabled my account for no apparent reason. It's not the first time it's happened to me with Facebook, so I'm done with them. I never did like Twitter, but now I'm on MeWe, and you can find me there if you want. Always on the Grow Network forums, where I'm a moderator, and southernappalachianherbs@gmail.com. I love answering these questions, and y'all have some good ones. I've had to do a lot of looking stuff up and studying. I think probably most of the questions have been about herbal bitters, digestive bitters and aromatic bitters, what the differences are and how to use them. So that's what I'm going to talk about in today's podcast. But first of all, last week there was an herb I wasn't quite sure of that was an ingredient in the Swedish bitters, and it's Lycopodium serratum. And it turns out my friend Tori was right, that is club moss. In Europe they call it ground pine and a few other names. It's not an herb I really know a whole lot about, so I'm going to do some exploration on that. Get out all the books and see what I can find out, and I'll probably have a good article on it on the blog, Wednesday or so. And that's going to be fun. I love learning about new herbs that I'm unfamiliar with, especially since this is one that grows in my area. And I think one reason I hadn't looked into it before is that some sources say it could be toxic. One of my favorite websites is naturalmedicinalherbs.net. You can look up most any herb on there, and they don't even put a description of this plant. They just say it contains lycopodium, which is poisonous. And well, I pulled out my physician's desk reference for herbs and supplements, and it says that's not true. So I'm looking into it. It's going to take a little study. I know the herb's been used for a long time, especially in Central and Eastern European herbal medicine, but also the British herbalists, Miss Greaves and Culpeper, they mentioned using it. And it actually used to be used in beers. So it has a long history of use. I got a feeling that one's kind of like sassafras. You know how one study came out a long time ago that said it could cause cancer, and when you really look at the details, it's you would have to drink like 50 gallons of sassafras tea every single day for 20 years to even have the slightest chance of getting hurt by sassafras. That's my opinion. That's not the government's position. You have to decide on that one for yourself. But so far, it looks like this club moss is a very useful herb, and I'm excited about this one. Also, I heard from my friend Jesse Knox. He listened to my podcast, got in touch, or I got in touch with him actually to see how he was doing. And, well, he went and mentioned me on his next podcast. And I think y'all are going to enjoy listening to his podcast. It's called Beast of Burden. Um, it's it's on Spreaker, but I think he's actually on iTunes and some other platforms. Um, Jesse's he's a neat guy. He grew up doing land management. It's like habitat for deer. Um, he's into permaculture. He grows medicinal mushrooms, and I want to get him on the show so we can talk about that because he really knows his stuff when it comes to medicinal mushrooms. His father died of ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease, as did my grandfather. So that's really how we connected and what we started talking about because he uses lion's mane, and other mushrooms as hopefully a preventative for that horrible disease. And I plan on doing the same. Well, it reminds me, Jesse's also a big trapper. He loves to hunt and trap, and that's how we met was through our mutual friend Tim Roper, the Meat Trapper. And Meat Trapper has a great show on Trapping Radio, which is Clint Locklear's platform. He does Trapping Radio, and Tim does Meat Trapper Radio. And those guys are, man, they are characters and great, solid guys with always a unique point of view. So if you're looking for some other interesting podcasts and you think you might have an interest in um, a lot of stuff, actually, these guys aren't just trappers. Clint and Jesse are both have permaculture PDCs, and I mean, we got a lot in common, really. And Tim's just, he's a great guy. So let's get into the show. Let's talk about bitters. All right, so I got into bitters probably close to a year ago now. So I'm still really excited about them. You know, they're newish to me, I guess you would say. Well, as I mentioned before, get a sip of my coffee here. As I mentioned before, I have asthma. I've had asthma all my life. Well, I guess it developed around the age of 2 or so. It was really horrible when I was younger. That's one of the main things that got me into medicinal herbalism. Um, well, I got things under control for a while. Like I used to have to take the meds all the time, and like albuterol and epinephrine and prescription meds that are really basically like amphetamines, and they just made me miserable when I was a kid and a teenager. I mean, I was walking around like a zombie all the time. It's just horrible. And early 20s, they started giving me heart problems. I mean, I was having really serious chest pains, and I quit them cold turkey and started looking for natural solutions. I went back to herbs, and that was the big impetus for that, really. Some, great herbs to use. I probably mentioned before, Codonopsis, Dangshin, Angelica, Lobelia. There's so many herbs that are really good for asthma, and I'll talk about that more another time. But I had it kind of under control again, and then work and family issues put me in the Sandhills in North Carolina. That's when your main allergies are to pine trees and mildew. That's about the worst place to be. I mean, you got black mildew and mold that covers everything that moves slow enough for it to grab hold of around here, and it's a pine bear. There's a Monsanto Superfund site down the road. I mean, the water's contaminated. It's just really bad if you got asthma. So things flared up again, big time. And well, I was looking into different things, and I ran across an old lecture by the late herbalist Michael Moore, not the Jackass filmmaker, the herbalist Michael Moore. Uh, and he said that if you have an asthma attack after you eat, it's a sign that you don't have enough acid in your stomach, basically. Your digestive juices aren't flowing. He called it upper GI deficiency in his energetic model of herbal medicine. And what's happening is because your body's not processing that food fast enough, it's not recognizing the proteins you're eating, it's thinking they're basically germs. Or, I mean, what an allergy is when your body misreacts. Pollen gets up your nose and your body thinks you're being invaded by some horrible bacteria or virus. And so it sets off an immune response. Well, the same thing happens in your stomach. In fact, most of your immune system is in your gut, so a lot of stuff can go on in there, which is one reason why fermented foods also help a lot with such conditions. So he said what you could do, it was real easy. He said have a sip of bitters before each meal. Well, I had to try it. I mean, things were getting so bad that I'd take a bite of food and maybe not every time, but at least every couple of days, I'd start having esophageal spasms and have to run to the bathroom coughing and throwing up. I mean, it was really bad. And I mean, I love to eat. I'm a huge eater. I love to cook. I love to eat. It really into food. And this was making my life miserable because having an asthma attack during and after every meal, really not fun. And I don't have any food allergies. So what he said made sense. And I went down to the store. I got a bottle of Angostura bitters. That's a whole classic brand, from the Roaring Twenties cocktail era. And I gave it a try. And first thing I noticed, I love the taste. I've always liked bitter things, coffee, chocolate, dark chocolate, I mean. So I gave it a try, and immediately I felt the secretions building in my mouth. The saliva starts the digestive process. And then I ate, and I didn't have an asthma attack. I mean, it was like it was bordering on miraculous. And I realized right then, man, he nailed it. And that's actually what got me started doing his course, the Southwest School of Botanical Medicine. After he passed away, his family, his heirs, made it free online. It's like 250 hours of herb classes. I highly recommend you checking it out. And I take all my class notes from those, and I've been posting them every few days on my blog. So you can actually go through it and read my notes and use that as a study guide or to fill any blanks. And I give some of my own impressions of some of the herbs if I find, maybe he didn't mention something I found worthwhile. And I honestly, it took me a while to get used to his personality. He's not a guy I would have gotten along with very well, I don't think. Um, but you'll see once you take his class if you do. Um, but he was a fantastic herbalist. He really knew his stuff. In fact, his course for free is so much better than many of the classes I paid a lot of money for. I mean, it's more comprehensive. There are more course materials. You get all his books in PDFs. You get his formulas in PDF. And like I said, like 250 hours of classes and another, I don't even know, probably 500 hours of audio recordings and the monographs of the herbs and such of that. Him out in the field showing the students how to wildcraft and what to look for in the plants. So really fantastic. Well, so Angostura did so well. And the main bittering agent in Angostura is gentian. So I got thinking about it, I mean, Angostura is like, I don't know, $8.50, $9 for a little 4-ounce bottle. And it has some sweeteners in it. And, I wanted something stronger medicinally, and I can always do things better and cheaper if I do them myself. So I got some gentian and kind of based it on that flavor profile. I put together what I call my daily digestive bitters. This is gentian root. This is Oregon grape root. Oregon grape is another wonderful bitter herb. These really stimulate the liver, by the way. Both of those really stimulate the liver. When you stimulate the liver, it stimulates similar tissues, such as small intestine and skin. So a lot of people, whether they have allergies or they have skin issues, an herbalist will say, use gentian or use Oregon graperoot, barberry, any of those really stimulating bitter liver herbs. Some of the more mild ones are like dandelion root, burdock root. Anyway, there are a lot of bitters, and this is why it's so much fun to work with, because so many medicinal herbs have a bitter flavor profile. So I put together gentian, I put together that with Oregon grape, and orange peels. I actually use mandarin orange peels. Star anise. Star anise is another wonderful herb for the digestion. Cinnamon and ginger. Put it in a jar. I had probably 2 ounces of herbs, maybe 2.5. I just eyeballed it. Poured a couple bottles of vodka over that, stuck it in the cabinet, shook it up a couple times a day, and immediately, because gentian is so bitter, it's one of the most bitter substances on earth, but it doesn't taste bad, really. Immediately it began getting bitter. And so within a couple of weeks, I started using that. And oh, wow. I mean, wonderful results. Absolutely wonderful results. You may hear I'm a little stuffed up today. Front came in. These tropical storms have been coming through here about every week. We had, I don't even know, half a foot of rain 2 days ago. I mean, it flooded out three-quarters of the state, and that sets the mold going crazy. Well, I'm a little stuffy in my nose, but my lungs are fine. That is like a miracle for me. I mean, if you've ever had that unable to breathe, like you don't know if you're going to survive the night feeling, you know how important it is to be able to comfortably take a breath. And so, yeah, that's what bitters has really helped me with. I mean, it's great. And since then, I've come up with several different formulas. I've got my daily digestive bitters formula, and if you need that, see that written down, you can find it on my blog. Just type in the search bar daily digestive bitters, or any of those terms will probably come up. I set up a secondary blog, which is southernappalachianbitters.blogspot.com, where I just put information on bitters alone. So you don't have to sort through all my articles on Southern Appalachian herbs. You can just go right there, and I think there are only like 25 articles on Southern Appalachian bitters. I started investigating all these old bitters formulas, and man, this is fun stuff. Okay, so probably one of the very first herbal medicines was digestive bitters. In the in ancient Egypt, in the papyrus, I can't remember what they call that. Well, anyway, the ancient writings that show what herbs they were using in ancient Egypt, there are mention of these bitter herbs. They found wine that had bitter herbs in it. In the Bible, they mention wormwood a lot. Jesus on the cross was offered gall and gall and wormwood. Wormwood's a bitter. Gall's obviously very bitter. Myrrh is a bitter. You can go through. I mean, Hippocrates and Pliny and Dioscorides. All these guys were recommending the use of bitters. Some people say the very first one was called Theriac. Now, I don't really consider that to be a bitter. What that was there was a king way back. I can't remember exactly what year. This is, I think, certainly before the Roman Empire. I believe it was before the Greek Empire. He started to experiment on his prisoners to find remedies for poison. Apparently, a lot of people were trying to poison him. And yes, he included all these bitter herbs, but he also included snake venom, scorpion venom. I mean, if it was a poison they could use to kill him, he put a little bit in it, and I mean, it's really like one of the first homeopathic remedies. So Theriac had all kinds of weird stuff in there, and yeah, it would have been bitter, but it wasn't for digestion. So I'm going to skip Theriac. Next comes King Gentius. Now, King Gentius was during the Roman Empire. He came up with a digestive bitters formula, tonic bitters, using gentian. So gentian is named after King Gentius. And after Rome finally defeated his empire, that's when the old doctors, Hippocrates and all those guys, picked up his formula. And so gentian is that first bitter herb, and gentian is still to this day one of the very best herbs you can use in a digestive bitter. Well, he actually put it together as a cure for the plague. And they said it had really good results. And if you remember last week's show, and I told you how I was coming down with a bad cold, and I took Swedish bitters, and I got well like almost immediately, maybe there is something to that. Like I said, your digestive system, your GI tract, the whole bit, that's where most of your immune system is. So when you get these, you support that, you're also supporting your immune system. They have so many good effects. When you take a little sip of bitters, you've got the stomach acids flowing, you've got your saliva flowing, the gallbladder, the pancreas are both stimulated. You create more bile. Bile is what breaks down the fats. Bile is like soap to a fat, okay? So it can take care of that before it ever gets into your intestines. Fat's taken care of. It helps with blood sugar issues because, like I said, it's stimulating those organs. It's helping the mucosa and the gut lining. It's putting just more juices, more energy throughout, from one end of your body to the other. So it really does have a lot of interesting uses. So this was the foundation of so much of what we study now as herbal medicine. And it just, it spread throughout the ages. The monastic medicine of the Middle Ages, all those monks and nuns, they were coming up with formulas we know today as usually additions to cocktails. I mean, Benedictine, vermouth. Vermouth is actually Old German for wormwood. It was a wormwood infused wine, a bitter wine. Um, you've got absinthe. Absinthe is also wormwood infused. That's main flavor profile is anise or a licorice type of flavor, but wormwood's the bittering agent. Wormwood is what was blamed for all those artists in the 1800s seeing a green fairy and doing crazy paintings like the Scream. Well, it wasn't really the wormwood, most likely, even though in really high doses, the thujone in wormwood can cause hallucinations. But you're also talking about a liqueur that was like, I believe, 150 proof. And they were just downing this stuff by the bottle. So, you could say, well, yeah, Van Gogh, he drank vermouth and he went crazy. Well, he was also known to drink paint thinner. I mean, he would drink anything he could get his hands on. So anyway, that's one of the reasons that some of these bitters started getting kind of a bad name. But along the line, they were helping a ton of people. One of the most famous, or one of the first things that comes to mind, and certainly one of the most famous cocktails of all time, is the gin and tonic. That tonic made from actually Angostura bark is one of the sources for it, even though Angostura is not flavored with Angostura bark. I know it's very confusing. It's quinine. Okay, quinine is a bitter that comes from the bark of a tree, and quinine was used to treat malaria. A Jesuit priest discovered it. Well, he was shown it by the natives in South America, and at that point they were having horrible malarial outbreaks in Rome, and it was a miracle cure that eventually wound up becoming popular with British sailors who were often sailing into the tropics, and that's where we get the gin and tonic from. So there's this always been this association between with bitters both as medicine and as an alcoholic beverage. And right before 1920, the Pure Food and Drugs Act, if you pick up any of these old publications, and I've documented some of these on my blog, they're really fun to read. Advertisements, advertorials, really. These companies like to put out little magazines and almanacs to promote their bitters. This were patent medicine. This was, there'd be like some pharmacist in New York, and he put together a new formula for bitters, and man, they said it cured everything. It would help your digestive issue, dyspepsia. They called that the nation's disease, dyspepsia. It would help with diarrhea, constipation. Sing the Pepto-Bismol song, and you got that. But they also said falling hair, scrofula, all these, general debility. I always like that one, general debility. So this is the way the old medicine, the patent medicines were sold, and I've often thought that, man, if I missed my calling in life, I should have been in a medicine show around 1900, going around with a bunch of crazy people playing music and doing comedy routines. That was predated vaudeville. Vaudeville basically grew out of the medicine shows. And, hawking my herbal remedies. That would have been fun. But the the medical establishment didn't much care for patent medicines. They didn't want people treating themselves. Just like today, they don't want people treating themselves. I mean, what comes to mind immediately? A few years ago, when I was having trouble with asthma, I had the Primatene mist inhaler. And suddenly they pulled it from the market. They said in that tiny little canister there were dangerous ozone gases. Now, all right, 100 of those wouldn't have had the same amount of ozone gases in them as one can of spray paint. So it was absolute BS, all right? What that was is they didn't want people treating themselves. It took several years for a new version of it to come out, and the thing doesn't work anymore. At least it doesn't work for me. So anyway, doctors have never wanted you treating yourself. So they passed the Pure Foods and Drug Act, and they got rid of medicinal bitters. Now, we can no longer make any claims about anything medicinal. Only a doctor can, and only a doctor can about something that's been proven in a laboratory. Basically, now it's going to be marketed by a pharmacist. So their cute little drug rep goes in and tells them what this new pharmaceutical does and gives them a free ticket to it for a cruise and a conference in the Caribbean, and they can promote that all day long. But when it comes to us talking about medicine that's been used for probably 1,000 years or more, we can't say, yeah, that'll actually treat any condition. No, we can't say that. But you can make your own bitters. And I'm putting out my recipes on my blog. And what's really fun is the Grow Network. I've just finalized the videos. They asked me to teach a course on making your own videos at home. It's just a short class, maybe an hour long. And it ought to be live pretty soon, so keep an eye on the Grow Network for that. So I guess that leads us up to the modern day where well, we're back, I guess really we're still back in the 1920s. So the first blow was the Pure Foods and Drug Act. The second blow to the bitters was Prohibition. They did not want people having cocktails. So that put most of the bitters companies out of business. So all we have left is really, of the old brands, maybe 3 or so. I mean, there's Angostura and there's Peychaud. There's one more that's not coming to me. But there's also been, with the rise of the craft cocktails, people are really starting to get back into bitters. And so you can make a bitter that's medicinal, or you can make a bitter for a cocktail. One's called digestive bitters, the other is called aromatic bitters. And I'm going to be putting up recipes for both. And pretty soon I'm going to be putting these formulas together and selling them to save people the trouble. They can just jump them in a jar and pour some vodka over them, and I'm going to do it inexpensively with a lot of high quality, and that's going to be a lot of fun too, so I'll keep you posted on that. Well, I guess that about wraps up today's show, and it's been fun as always, and I look forward to hearing from you. And well, all right, let's play this one out. Yeah, all right, time for the good old disclaimer. Still working on the timing here, but here we go. The information in this podcast is not intended to diagnose or treat any disease or condition. Nothing I say or write has been evaluated or approved by the FDA. I'm not a doctor. The U.S. government does not recognize the practice of herbal medicine, and there is no governing body regulating herbalists. Therefore, I'm really just a guy who studies herbs. I'm not offering any advice. I won't even claim that anything I write or say is accurate or true. I can tell you what herbs have been traditionally used for. I can tell you my own experience and if I believe an herb has helped me. I cannot nor would I tell you to do the same. If you use an herb anyone recommends, you are treating yourself. You take full responsibility for your health. Humans are individuals and no two are identical. What works for me may not work for you. You may have an allergy, a sensitivity, an underlying condition that no one else even shares and you don't even know about. Be careful with your health. By continuing to listen to my podcast or read my blog, you agree to be responsible for yourself, do your own research, make your own choices, and not to blame me for anything ever.